also want to welcome people in British Columbia. We know we have about 56 people joining us from there. So thank you for making the time to be with us, and for the people in the room, this may be a new experience for you. Please note you will not be on camera, so that will not be recorded. We're just taking the images forward. So again, thank you very much. And for those of you in Vancouver, just to remind you that today we are at the PSR conference. We're at the PSR conference in Ontario, 2014 National Conference, called Partners in Recovery, Uncovering Potential. I think for many of you in Vancouver, you'll remember your host, Jordan. We thank you, as always, for your technological support. We wouldn't be up and running today without you, just to say that once again. Matt is in the room with us, and as you know, he's the moderator. He will also speak during this session today. He will just share with us a little bit of his own experience, but in the meantime, he is moderating the chat. That for those of you in the room, it's a little bit blurry, but he will be moderating the chat, and he will be helping us to take questions, and he's continually just answering people's questions online. So just so you know what he's doing. On the right, we have Dr. John Higenbottam. I think you know him well. Really nice to have him in the session this afternoon. And it's really, we owe him a deep gratitude for his work in making this whole platform come together. So thank you, John. And myself. And you've heard from me many times before. It is really wonderful to be with you. So thank you. Oh dear. I think I... No, it's coming up. Okay. So this session is titled Innovative Canadian PSR Education and Practice. Our learning objectives for today are to describe the history and current trends in PSR education in BC, outline the PSR post-degree diploma program at Douglas College, describe an innovative platform specifically designed to support learning and advance recovery-oriented PSR practice while building a strong learning community. And so I think we have a demonstration of that today as we have people joining us from Vancouver. And finally, identify future education, research, knowledge translation activities and encourage your participation. Please note, for those of you in the room, we do not have the slide handouts for you today, but they will be posted on the PSY Rehab site. So after the session, it takes us generally about 24 hours or so to make them available to you, but they will be available to you. So we're trying to save some trees and just take care of things a little bit. But hopefully, if you have questions, just do let us know. So there are a bit of our learning objectives, and then the agenda for our session this afternoon is really John will help us outline the history of how we got here. We'll talk a little bit about the degree. We'll show you a little bit about what that looks like. Describe current resources and activities of PSR Advanced Practice website, and outline the content of the forthcoming BC PSR framework. And Dr. Higenbottam will share that information with us. And then we'll just announce some new developments and opportunities. And of course, we want to hear from you because our community of practice is you. So we really heavily rely on you to participate in this endeavor. And so I'll now hand you over to John, who's just going to come up and tell us a little bit about the history. There you go, John.
Many of us who've worked in the field, of course, have seen for many years the need to, if we really are to be serious about transforming mental health services to effective recovery-oriented, evidence-based practices in this country, particularly in community mental health PSR practices, we need a workforce of people who actually have the education and training really to be able to deliver these approaches. And this is also, if you want to consider the Mental Health Commission's national strategy for the country, the national strategy speaks to having a workforce of people who have the necessary skills to actually transform mental health services in the country. And also speaks about the need, there's another chapter which speaks to the need to have evidence-based effective practices, particularly in community mental health. And when that document was being designed, some of us were working very hard behind the scenes to try and get PSR injected into the document as much as possible. And we weren't totally successful with that. If you take a close read of it, you'll find that there are a couple of mentions of PSR in the document. I think since the national strategy was published, there's been a gradual realization, epiphany in some places that it's really going to be necessary to have this workforce. And so then the question becomes, well, where's the workforce going to come from? And when I speak about workforce, the real issue is really we need an education strategy, which is a pan-Canadian educational strategy, which really impacts on the education and training of all mental health practitioners. I'm talking about psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, OTs, nurses, as well as frontline workers. So so this is just a piece of what's necessary here. What we're going to talk about the next little while really focuses on more on the frontline worker and the capability to develop that workforce, at least in British Columbia. So this history, this identified need for educational opportunities has been out there for a long time, and this program, which we call the post-degree diploma program, which was set up at Douglas College, was really to respond to that need, at least in Western Canada. Now, Eastern Canada, Ontario has had the Humber and the Mohawk programs, and they've trained people through those programs, but there has been no equivalent program in Western Canada. It was a serious problem for us, so we decided to develop, well, first of all, put together a proposal. We had the administration of Douglas College, which is located in Westminster, Vancouver suburb. They got behind this, were very, very supportive, and we accordingly developed a curriculum headed that run through the various academic hoops, and we managed to get the program online 3 years ago, and we've had three groups of students that have come through. It's been developed, it's gradually evolved into a fully online program, because one of the issues we've got, which is the same issue as all the other provinces and territories, is we've got this vast country, we've got a lot of people that are living in places apart from the major metro areas like Vancouver. How do you give them access to a program like this? In the case of BC, how do the people from Prince George or Kelowna or places like that get access to this program? So we decided very rapidly to go online with the entire program. The only part of the program which is not online is the practicum, and the practicum is usually most of the students are actually coming from the lower mainland area, which includes Greater Vancouver, and so most of them are going to practicum placements there. But in the case of other students who happen to be living in Prince George or some other place, we've managed to get practicum placements in their own communities, which has been quite good. And just for the record, we've had students from Ontario. We've had several Ontario students. We had a Nunavut student this past year, and Nunavut student this past year. We've had Manitoba students, and so we've gradually kind of taken over there. So watch out. That's one sort of major development that's occurred in BC now. A somewhat separate initiative that's happened in the province. The Ministry of Health in BC still is in a role of trying to develop standards and programs, including educational programs for healthcare practitioners and supporting those practitioners in the field. And one of the recommendations which came about in our last of many mental health plans, most of which never went very far, but this one went far enough, at least, that one recommendation has been addressed, which is to develop a psychosocial rehabilitation framework for the province. What is a framework? Well, it's basically a blueprint for how you can develop psychosocial programs and services in the province. So it's intended to be usable by the health authorities. We have health authorities providing the direct services. And so this is really a template or a handbook which includes all of the significant the framework has the complete evidence base since 2000 in terms of randomized controlled trials, meta-analyses, and really solid evidence supporting that supported employment as a best practice in mental health. So we have been working on this I call it wretched framework now for 3 years, and it's actually become a huge and cumbersome, unfortunately, document. It's about 125 pages now, and it's got about the same number of references, and it's like some somebody's PhD dissertation. But I think it will be valuable when we eventually get it out to the field. And actually, we've got some pirate copies of it circulating around in the field right now. And the response we've got from people is they're very pleased with it. So we're hopeful that we're going to actually finish the framework fairly soon. And we'll be speaking a little bit later about the advanced practice. And what I'll just say about what's now is that this one of the major goals for the advanced practice was actually to communicate the framework and provide this kind of support to the field. So when we talk about advanced practices, it's one of the major goals for the advanced practice was the framework of the field. So the last point there, we've been working with partners to develop an advanced practice, and as part of that, developing what's euphemistically referred to as a sustainability plan, which most of you can probably figure out is some way to find enough money to keep the thing going. We got an initial grant of funding from the Ministry of Health, both to develop the PSR framework as well as to develop the advanced practice. And now we've been asked to develop this sustainability plan, which basically means tapping the health authorities for enough funding to keep these initiatives going. So that's all about it. The next one.
Yeah. Thank you, John. So next we're going to talk a little bit about the post-degree diploma program. So I'm really thrilled to see at this conference that we've had so much discussion about the need for education and the need to come together and align what we're teaching and consider it within a competency framework. So for those of you who are in Vancouver, we had a good session, and you'll remember in March we had a webinar about the competencies, but certainly at this conference we've spoken a lot about the competencies and how they relate to practice, and many of the educators I think really we need to align specifically what we're teaching to those competencies. So very exciting work. So we plan to tell you a little bit just about our own post-degree diploma, recognizing that we have a colleague in the audience who teaches something very similar, but we'll just give you some details about our particular program. And for us, the eligibility is really to have a previous degree with some learning about abnormal psychology. Cohort is generally about 25 students per year, and with 5 courses, 4 of which are online, as John mentioned, with the 1 practicum course at about 64 hours, and that course also requires a paper. 99% of people finish this course and pass with flying colours. We have a graduate in the room that we will hear a little bit more from in a moment. The student evaluations, Matt will tell us a little bit more, but mostly positive. We do have some work to do in terms of the technology, and we acknowledge that. And also we want to really hone in the, really looking at the outcomes with more precision. So we're working on that as well, and we're about to roll that out in 2 weeks or so. And I mentioned the competencies, just really aligning the content to the competencies. So we're certainly shaping the material continually. Mentioned that we're 3 years in operation, and each year I know that all of our instructors evaluate and look and trim and change and add current literature to their presentations. And so that's really that slide. I want to show you a little visual because this is the visual of our program. I think it's kind of cool. Just want to show you a little bit of the logos, but really that's us. And so when I was thinking about this presentation, I really appreciate work by NEMAC in terms of transformative learning. And I think when we think about transforming mental health practice, we're really asking people to reflect, to consider their work environment, and I really think that transformational learning helps people to stop, to think, and to really deliberately and mindfully consider themselves within their systems. So that's just a little direct quote there from Pat Nemec that I really appreciate and have communicated with her about that. That's something that I find very helpful. Some of you may be aware of just positive psychology, really focusing on the strength-based approach that we've heard about this morning, and concepts in terms of complete mental well-being, flourishing, positive emotions, flow, self-determination, post-traumatic growth, which we've been doing a lot of work with the occupational therapy students in particular, really helping people understand that this concept, I think, offers people new hope, resilience, and really measuring what we're doing in education and training of service providers to promote a positive focus and support a culture of recovery. So here, I think we're really drilling down to what are the underlying concepts of positive psychology that can contribute to education and therefore advancing practice. And I'll tell you a little bit about some of our instructors. The first person I'll tell you about is Dr. Simon Davies. Some of you may be familiar with his work. He's published Community Mental Health Practice in Canada, second edition, highly recommended. For those of you who are teachers, it may be a resource. I see a nod in the room. And for those of us who are lucky to work alongside Simon and to have him in this course, it's just really amazing. He comes with a clinical background of a direct service manager, and also, as you can see, tremendous wealth of background in terms of education. I'm sorry, this slide is out of place here, but it just draws on another concept that can be helpful around self-regulation in terms of applying those concepts to educating our future leaders in healthcare. We have a little bit of research that supports its application. It's still pretty new, but really I think the idea that we often translate to practice is helping people very deliberately set goals and to support progress along the way. But it's something that I think we may just adopt a little bit more. The research at the moment is more in terms of physically learning, for example, basketball, but I think certainly we have some concepts that are applicable to education. So the second person is myself. I know you know me, just some clinical background, interested in doing some research in areas including really understanding the lived experience of activity participation for people who live with schizophrenia. Also beginning to do some research with the Mental Health Commission and looking at the notion of applying recovery tools within 4 centres across Canada. So that's just a little bit about some of my own research interests. We also have the great honour of having Stephen Epp with us, who comes with an occupational therapy background, holds also a kinesiology background, and Stephen has worked in downtown Eastside Vancouver for about 15 years. He's an amazing person who's really committed to helping people who live with mental health issues engage in communities of their choice and engage in meaningful roles. He's an amazing person to work with. He is our clinical practice leader for occupational therapy for Vancouver Coastal Health, so we're really lucky to have this gentleman. And the last person I'll tell you, the last person, direct instructor is, there we go, Mary Jensen. So she teaches our 5004 course, and Mary comes with, as you can see just by her brief bio here, she was the Deputy Chief Consultant for Mental Health for Psychology in the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, and established the Interdisciplinary Fellows Program in Psychosocial Rehabilitation, worked with the World Health Organization, and was appointed the American Psychological Task Force on Serious Mental Illness and Severe Emotional Disorders. As a member of that task force, She developed the Recovery to Practice initiative and prepared the curriculum materials released in 2014 for the discipline of psychology. So she's an amazing woman. It's just, you know, you just want to sit beside her so you can kind of drink in her information, just, you know, sitting beside her. So she's an amazing instructor. And then we have two very cool women who help us. I'm so sorry, I don't know why this is not working. So there we go. Oops, so daisies. Oh, dear me. We hear from two of our supervisors, Beata Zaleski and Tracy Schofield. So these are one person with a social work background and the other a nursing background. These individuals have worked in clubhouses and have really developed an array of clinical services for people with significant mental health issues over the years. So these two individuals support and help students learn the practicum supervisors. So, so we'd like to give you a little bit of a peek at platform. So I'm just going to ask Matt if he can help me for a little minute. So, thank you, Matt. So, stop talking. Okay. So what I was going to do is just show you the platform, but maybe when you get these slides, you may be just interested in cutting and pasting. But the platform is a nicely developed platform that has sections that look at, help the student understand what is the curriculum about, gives the outline of the 12 weeks, gives you an idea of the expectation of the assignments, how things are marked. So each week there's content piece, so the required readings are posted, and the core learnings for that week are summarized and identified. Along with that, we have a live platform called Collaborate, which is the second point to here. And on that platform, we ask students to click on this link for about an hour and a half, once a week per course. And during that time, we present slides as we have today, and then we engage in dialogue around a lot of the issues. So it's much like what you're having today, this live session where there's chat, the facilitator can see the chat, and so we have determined questions and engagement around the topic of interest for that particular session. So it's it's a highly engaging environment, and I have to say, as an instructor of these courses, it has taken me a little while to learn how to make the material come alive virtually and to, I think, try to capture the audience in a very different way. So unlike a face-to-face, as I am with people in the audience in front of me, I get a sense of people listening, are they bored? It's a little bit more tricky as you're online. And so just learning how to navigate that as a person who's, I think this is our fourth year now, so I think I'm getting a little bit better. But I think as we consider applying values and principles to help people do that transformative piece of the learning, it just adds a little bit of complexity that I think takes some time. So I'm very appreciative to writers like Patricia Nina, who helps really ground how we can do those things. So when you go home, if you're interested, we can send you a link whereby you can go in and just have a look at these platforms yourself. We have one that we provide to students as an orientation, which is very easy just to show you. So we can do that after the fact. So now it's my great pleasure to hand you over to Matt, and I will attempt to answer for people online. I will attempt to just engage in that conversation. So we're going to switch both. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody in the room. Hello, everybody in British Columbia. And if we have anybody online from elsewhere in the country, hello to you, too. I'm just going to adjust the microphone here so I'm not crouching down. Yeah, so I get the honor and the pleasure of sharing my experience of the first ever cohort of the Douglas College Postgraduate Diploma Program. And I found out about it because John started it and came to a clubhouse programming meeting that we had in the Health Authority where I work in BC, and sort of shared the idea of the program forthcoming in the next fall, and did a bit of a presentation and showed all the benefits and all these ideas, and it just struck me. And I'd already been involved in PSR work for a long time and was very familiar with sort of the principles and the values and how that work was brought out, but I didn't know how well formalized and how well researched and the long and involved history that it had. So the idea of coming to an ongoing education program and participating in some of that learning was really exciting to me. Douglas makes it really easy to participate because the program is primarily online, almost exclusively really, but very, very interactive because you have the chat functions, you have discussion boards, you have really, really, really engaging activities. You do group projects. You do group projects as far apart as, I know one student was doing a group with somebody else who was getting up in, I think it was, do you have any international students?
No.
No, okay, so somebody as far away as like the furthest east coast of Canada and engaging with us in BC. So they were doing a group project and he was getting up at like 5 a.m. or something as the other person was sort of getting down to lunch or whatever would be going on. So a lot of really fun options for that kind of thing. My personal experience in the courses was really, really rich. We had 4 amazing instructors the year that I was there. I'm sure we have 4 amazing instructors now. But everybody brought something different. So learning about the different aspects of PSR, as Regina's just laid out, from different people whose areas of expertise sort of line up with those topics was really, really exciting. The assessment is fun. It's also sort of based on the personality of the educator that's running that program. So you might be doing papers, you might be doing exams, you might be doing quizzes, or same thing, like I said before, they're getting evaluated on your contribution to the discussions. The program itself is designed for folks who have a degree, as we talked about. And it's also especially useful for people who are working in the field already and want to upgrade or increase their knowledge base. I was doing full-time work, helping manage a clubhouse program, and I was going, at the time they were regularly scheduled classes that were offered at a specific time. I guess they are still. So the lectures are available usually in the evening. So if you're working the day, you come down in the evening, you can attend the class that way. Ask questions of the professors. You have microphones, and so it's very, very engaging that way. My practicum experience was also really quite seamless for me. I got to do it at my job site, integrating the new knowledge from the program with the work that I was already doing, which was fantastic. And then we had a great cohort. So even though we weren't always in class together, and sometimes we were online, we got to know each other really, really well. And that was fun to see how people went on from the program and engaged in different arenas. So just some examples of things that people ended up doing that I know after the program, because there's about, I guess we've had 3 cohorts, so there's probably about 60 to 70 people who graduated from the program now in BC. And some of the examples of things that folks have done, lots of people got work in clubhouse or rehab-style programming in the area. The session just next door that was right before this that I was helping moderate on an ambassador program in clubhouses was run by an alum of this program. So that was really cool. Folks that got jobs in criminal justice, in mental health housing programs, mental health management, and then as well master's degrees in occupational therapy, so graduate programs in OT, and 2 people that I know of graduate programs in social work. So you can go anywhere, and having this on your CV or on your resume looks amazingly awesome. Now that people are recognizing for what it's worth. I'm almost done, but I am going to share quickly just a bit of a testimony that I got from one of the grads. I don't think there's any identifying information, so I'm not going to say his or her name, but I just to attest to the power of this program for people personally and professionally. The PSR program at Douglas College has opened up many doors for me. Opportunities to advance my level of competency and better my career possibilities have continued to present themselves due in part to the growing recognition of Douglas College's PSR program as the highest PSR education available in BC And here they say, and Canada, question mark, question mark. So I'm sure it's debatable, but definitely up there. Even greater perhaps than the growing recognition of the program, the opportunities to build connections with experienced professors and bright professional students have also provided invaluable. For example, to be eligible to apply for a master's program in occupational therapy, I was required to prove my academic abilities in courses that were directly related to OT. Without the Douglas College PSR program and the academic references from acclaimed professors, I can confidently say I would not be currently in my program. The PSR program offered education taught by some of the most forward-thinking and experienced practitioners in the field. With a diverse style of pedagogy, each professor was able to equip students with new skills to apply their professions personally. This instilled great confidence within me to take the required steps to take my career to the next level. Having professors come alongside me, making themselves available to my professional growth, through this level of invested interest, the professors have created what has been perhaps the most rewarding educational experience for me to date. I didn't write that, but somebody else. So that just speaks to the quality of the educational offering. And for anybody who's interested, I would highly encourage you to take it, no matter what stage of your career you're in. And if you have programs and you work with staff that you can see this being a great advantage to, I would encourage you to support them to do it too, in as much as you have the means and whatever it takes. That's my sharing, I think.
So just to say a little bit more about the BC recovery-oriented PSR framework. And again, as I mentioned before, this and actually the genesis of this was really this recommendation in the BC mental health plan to develop a PSR framework. And this was really quite a just to say that this was really quite a breakthrough in BC. And we were very pleased to see this emerge, and it was one of the best, most supportive recommendations they could have made. It was actually put a whole section in the mental health plan around the PSR. Now, I know Ontario's had equivalent language in their mental health plans, but this was the first that we had this appear in a BC plan, and it was very, very helpful for this to happen. Mind you, we had to do a fair amount of work behind the scenes with the person who was writing the plan to make sure that actually recommendation actually happened, but it did, so we're quite pleased about that. And the PSR framework has been developed in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and the local health authorities. And again, we have a system in BC where we still have our Ministry of Health, but the actual provision of services, including mental health services, is through these health authorities that we have in the province. And can this link work?
No.
That's the one. So the framework domains, just go through what these are, and you might have some questions about these, but we were actually told which PSR domains we were going to be allowed to develop a framework with. So there are some obvious ones here which don't appear, and we actually had a number of quite heated arguments with the Ministry of Health about this, but they got caught up in some of the politics. One example would be ACT teams, of course. But the framework domains that are being addressed in the framework are employment, and this goes through the whole gamut of employment, which also, and again, the literature summarized all this really significant, high-quality literature from the year 2000 is summarized in the framework. and also the case of employment, it also captures the shift in paradigm which has occurred since from the old days. The old days, of course, we had pre-vocational training, and that's what you did in hospitals to prepare people so they could go out and work in the community. And of course, now we don't do that anymore. We've shifted from a train-in-place approach to a place-and-train approach where you support employment, of course, in IPS based on putting people in employment, supporting them in employment. And of course, the literature is overwhelmingly clear that this is a much more effective approach than our old pre-voc approach. Excuse me. That entire range of literature is summarized in there. And with the way that the framework's organized with each of the major domains, the literature, the evidence base is summarized, and then there are a set of recommendations. And we've had to be careful again doing the politics around the health authorities not to be too prescriptive. So we were told that we couldn't just order the health authorities to do this or do that, or get with it and get some evidence-based practices in place. But we were told to actually encourage them to adopt these practices through particularly through the advanced practice that we've created. The other domains, education's focus here, of course, on supported education. Leisure, there's a section on leisure, which is quite a small section actually, because there isn't a lot of literature on leisure, but it is still, as we'll all agree, an very important area. The wellness section is a very large section because of the actually massive amount of literature in the area of wellness, including all of the illness management, recovery literature from people like Drake and User and Bond and those people. And so all of that literature is summarized again with a set of recommendations. So the framework reviews the evidence and makes recommendations for the development of services in the like domains. The framework also considers other clinical approaches, which you might refer to these as enhancing approaches. They're approaches for which we know the literature suggests that combining these approaches with the evidence-based approaches in the domains really enhances their effectiveness and positive outcomes. And we're referring to approaches here like cognitive remediation and training, cognitive behavior therapies, motivational interviewing, family involvement and support. This gets to approaches which recognize the importance of things like family psychoeducation. And then peer support and peer-delivered approaches. We didn't originally have peer support and peer-delivered approaches in there, but this framework has grown considerably since we started, and this is one of the areas that was added into it, peer support and peer-delivered, and appropriately so. So, talking about, I'll introduce it and you can come over and do a better job with it. But just say a little bit about, I mentioned the term advanced practice a few times here. So this all started with the framework, and we received funding from the Ministry of Health to develop the framework. And then short time after that, we were asked to develop this capability, which is called an advanced practice. So what is an advanced practice? Well, it's BC's term for what I guess in earlier days we would have called a center of excellence, which is basically centers of excellence, of course, are concerned with the promotion of best clinical practices, research and education. So that's basically why the advanced practice has been set up to do this. So think of it as kind of a center of excellence. The BC term for it is an advanced practice. And the Ministry of Health has set these up in a couple of other areas, and I'll just mention those because it may explain why some of these don't exist in framework. And one of the areas has been with ACT teams. And so ACT, of course, is recognized as a PSR, or should be at least a PSR best practice. So there is an advanced practice for ACT teams. They actually have their own webpage. If you've got an interest in ACT teams, you can go and have a look at that. There has been a standards document for ACT that's been developed, and it looks very much like the Ontario one for you people from Ontario. But it's up online, and you might want to have a look at it. There's also been an advanced practice developed for early psychosis initiatives in BC. We call these EPI programs, early psychosis initiative programs, and that also has quite a strong PSR component to it, including PSR evaluation of using some PSR-oriented tools. So that also has its own webpage, and it's been set up as an advanced practice. And so the third advanced practice, which is the one we're talking about here, the PSR one, it was the third one to be developed and was set up basically on the same model as the other ones. So we got the funding, we set up a steering committee, and the steering committee group of the three of us have been quite actively involved together with a person from the Ministry of Health and actually getting the advanced practice up and running. So,
Sure. We're just conscious that we want to leave some time for questions too. So, really, I think John, you've covered most of this material already, but this gives you a little bit of a history of how it developed, and we're still under development, but really the intent is to, that last point, support and disseminate findings from high quality research initiatives, amongst other things. So the work continues, as we mentioned, on the forthcoming BC recovery-oriented PSR framework. 5 educational offerings are currently up on the website, developed and delivered by the AP in the pilot period, and 7 more planned to be delivered. This is the first one of the second 7. We've had rich feedback from the webinar series, and we have really developed our in vivo evaluative capacity. The development of the BC PSR AP implementation and sustainability plan proposal, as John mentioned, is under development, and we're almost finished with that. And I think the celebration there is really the fact that it's a collaboration between health authorities and Douglas College and various partners to really pull this together. So it's about really, I think, engaging in commitment from different organizations so that we can continue our work together. And this just gives you a little bit of a snippet of some of the feedback from our webinars. As a peer support worker, I really love the opportunity to be amongst the professionals and learning amongst them, and represents a very important role within the mental health community. I think for me, the fact that, it's representative and we're situated with people receiving services and those delivering services. And, hopefully we get to a day where people don't have to identify maybe as peer support worker, but they just feel part of the community. But to me, there was a lot of hope in that. Next person says, thank you so much for the information. It's opened a whole new door for me to assist my clients. And again, I think that's just a demonstration of the learning. Next person says, as a student, I found the webinar informative. I would love to participate in future webinars, and thank you. And the last quote is, living in a remote area, I found this format invaluable in terms of training and the exchange of ideas and strategies to assist clients. I would love to see more of them and would suggest monthly webinars. And I think the thing for this that resonated for me is the fact that we have access to remote areas. And I think in speaking with individuals from remote areas, there's a sense of isolation sometimes, or a sense of, we had an amazing conversation with somebody recently from the interior of BC saying that we don't really think about peer support services. We're not really there yet. And that to me was a little surprising in truth, but I think just trying to reach out and help our colleagues develop that professional practice is what we're about. So we thought we'd just give you a little bit of a snippet of some of that feedback. And this is a little bit about some of the research we're doing. The first piece of work on collaborative research in self-directed care, exploring the impact of bursary programs with partners from Open Door Group from Vancouver Coastal Health, San Francisco University, and Julie Cook from the University of Illinois. So that piece of work is underway, and ethics proposal is under review. Understanding the experience of individuals who attend Hearing Voices Group is a partnership with Vancouver Coastal Health and UBC Occupational Therapy Master students. Very exciting to see that work happening. The next part is does Get Set and Connect recovery-oriented PSR approach foster social inclusion and citizenship for participants along their recovery journey. And this is research with Vancouver Burnaby branch of CMHA and San Francisco SFU, which is Simon Fraser University. Sorry, just being with my brother from San Francisco for the last weekend. Anyway. And the last part is from policy to practice that I just mentioned, improving the healthcare system through implementation of recovery guidelines into services with partners from McGill, BCH, Vancouver Coastal Health, University of Montreal, Mental Health Commission of Canada. So, we're just trying to build that research base so that we can really advance our practice. And in the future, we look forward to building relationships, in particular with you in the room and with you on online, and collaborating with interesting groups of individuals in an effort to further the goals of the advanced practice and just broaden the scope and our reach of our community of practice. So that's important to us. Launch the framework, as John had mentioned, and continue to publish high-quality webinars and then move into a consultancy role. So we would like to make ourselves available to people should they wish to have a dialogue or consider some change implementation. Evaluate service to ensure its comprehensiveness and relevance, accessible hub for resources and learning relevant to PSR. So really just evaluate what we're doing, complete our sustainability plan. We have announced the upcoming PSR conference in 2015 in Vancouver, so that's just another little flag for that. And then we are hoping to support the publication of a Canadian recovery-oriented PSR resource or textbook. So we're just in collaboration with a publishing company, and we're hoping that will, fingers crossed, that will come to fruition. So there's some of our future plans, and I wonder if we have questions either from the room or from people online. So feel free to just let us know if you have any questions or comments or thoughts or ideas for us or ways in which you would like to collaborate with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Dr. Rignick is just he's going to come up and have a question or comment. So thank you for that.
So thanks. I think this is very important work. I'm also based in the hospital system in BC and aware of parallel work that's happening for tertiary care planning. I flagged that there may be a bit of a disconnect. Not that there's a complete overlap, but there's a partial overlap between the work. And I'm wondering more generally, not just for BC, what may be the plans to try to, for lack of a better word, infiltrate systems that traditionally have not been that friendly for PSR with this type of approach to education, the framework both in BC and elsewhere.
So John, I think, has some ideas. Thank you very much for that wonderful question. In terms of what we've done as a team, it's not on the slides here, but we've been engaged in a number of recovery dialogues with, at this point, staff in tertiary care at VGH, Vancouver General Hospital, so with tertiary care services. So we've had about 6 dialogues that I hope, supported the beginning of that dialogue.
I don't have any really great ideas on that one, Randy, but it just really kind of illustrates the silo problem I think that we deal with throughout this country and throughout the mental health world. I think, ideally there would be some real coupling of what's going on with the framework and PSR. And I mean, how come we think about developing tertiary services and not think about PSR? Because the two should be just completely intertwined. What I was going to say is the only real contact we've had with that group that are planning tertiary services, we're aware of them. In fact, we had a request to ship our materials on framework over to them so they could have a look at them. But that's the only real connection that's happened. But I think your point's really well taken, and I don't know if you got any ideas about how we might be able to bring the two processes together. I don't know, but I really would agree that it's important that happen.
So it's running a little bit again. In response, I think provincial ministries have a major obligation to play in this case. They can connect the dots. BC was well positioned to do that, but people may not know. BC just very recently, December, actually disbanded their mental health substance use office and kind of spread it around for a focus on more integrated collaborative care. There may be a rethinking of that at the ministry level, but I think across provinces, across countries, psychosocial rehab can't be left just to the hospital system or just to the community sector or just to private vendors. The prime example for people who know what's happened in Israel, in 2008, they legislated countrywide psychosocial rehab that is protected funding and can't be, the funding can't be taken away into the hospital system. It's still the only law that I know of in the world that actually has done that work, protected it from inpatient and outpatient mental health care. So it's completely separate. Now there's another problem. It's a bit siloed from the other parts of the mental health system, but it has caused a major boom. Like it's blooming PSR in Israel because of that protection. So I think the legislature as well as the regulator have a prime role, and our role as PSR clinicians as well as PSR service users and PSR advocates is to try to help governments realize that at all levels, but particularly I think in Canada at the provincial level and in other countries that may not have provinces or states at the national level.
Yeah, I think it'd be absolutely wonderful if you can get some sort of legislative requirement, which is would be wonderful if that happened. But in order for that to happen, you of course have to have enough vision and understanding at the political level that you can make that happen. And that it sounds like Israel had that kind of vision and understanding at the political level, and we're really well informed in making that decision. And of course, I'm not sure we're quite in the same position, but it would be wonderful to have that. But certainly, and it gets back to an argument that many of us have is that how do we get the health authorities, the governance structures in this country to connect the dots and understand that if they really want to deal with the enormous pressures they've got on their acute care system, they have to address this issue of having a workforce and people at all levels in the mental health system who are actually develop provide kind of services that are going to keep people out of the emergency rooms. And how do you do that? How do you get the light to come on? It's come on in some places, but not everywhere.
John Collins from British Columbia, here in Toronto. John, I've asked you this question off the record. I just wanted to put it on the record. The program you're talking about is a postgrad program, postgrad diploma. And given the philosophy of inclusiveness, I wonder if there's any plans to develop an undergrad program or a diploma of some kind or certificate so that other people can access this kind of really valuable information and get into the service.
It's a great question. My quick answer is yeah. We've had a lot of requests to do this, and I really think we should, because you've got a lot of people working out there in the field who are highly experienced, really dedicated to the field, but don't have a degree. And so yeah, I think we need to try and do that somehow. questions?
One comment, just in response to your, my name is Clark McFarland, I'm with CMHA Conference Visiting Branch, and you're going to a question around how do we turn that light on. You know, in Ontario right now, the hospitals are under a tremendous amount of pressure, and the funding formula for them has changed, and that is putting them under the microscope and putting a lot of financial pressure on them. And in some assessments that have been done, some hospitals have been told you're doing too much community work. You need to move that out. And some hospitals are getting to the point where they are saying, we're going to have to start turning people away, which is unheard of for a hospital. Those conditions create an opportunity for the community to step up and say, this is how, because the pressure is coming from the community too. We need to respond. And how do we respond most effectively? I think it does come back down to evidence, though. We need to be able to demonstrate that this type of education results in more effective outcomes, which has an impact on the dollars spent. I mean, I know it's bold language, but it does come down for the funders. It does come down to them. Where do we get most bang for the buck? And also a dynamic in Ontario is they're starting to look at revisit rates for Verge. So. And we do have targets, and it forces collaboration between the hospital and the community, and that's key as well. It can't be seeing this as a community or a hospital issue.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. One of the things, I don't want to take too much time on this, one of my things on my bucket list for the next year or so is I really would like to see an article, which I'm going to take on writing myself, about this whole issue of the governance of health services and funding of health services. Because what we see right across the country is we just lurch from one governance model to another. And unfortunately, in most of these models, mental health, particularly community mental health, and also continuing care, rehab, or I'm talking physical rehab, those are the areas that are taking a hit because they can't compete with acute care. And the funding models basically support all the money's going on the acute care side. And unfortunately, it's getting